For more than half a century, the Zodiac Killer has remained one of the most terrifying mysteries in American history. He taunted police with letters, challenged the media with cryptic ciphers, and vanished without ever being identified. Every few years, a new suspect emerges, reigniting hope that the truth is finally close, only for the case to fall silent again. But this time feels different. In 2025, a former police officer named Jay made a shocking claim on social media. His own grandfather may have been the Zodiac Killer, not a drifter, not a random suspect, but a law enforcement officer who worked the very cases he was investigating. As disturbing details began to surface, matching timelines, unexplained evidence, and chilling behavioral patterns, the question became impossible to ignore. Was the Zodiac hiding in plain sight all along? Tonight, we follow the evidence and decide for ourselves why the Zodiac mystery never dies. The Zodiac Killer remains one of the most haunting figures in criminal history because he was never caught, never identified, and never truly silenced. Unlike many serial killers, Zodiac didn't just commit murders. He created a public spectacle. Through letters, ciphers, and phone calls, he directly challenged law enforcement and the media, turning the investigation into a psychological war. Each message felt like proof that he was still watching, still in control. Over the decades, countless suspects have been named, books have been written, and documentaries have been released, yet none have delivered definitive answers. The lack of closure keeps the case alive, especially for victims' families and investigators who dedicated their lives to it. Every new piece of evidence, no matter how small, feels like it could finally crack the case. That's why, even after more than 50 years, the Zodiac mystery refuses to fade, and why new theories still capture global attention. The first murders and early patterns. The Zodiac's reign of terror began quietly but brutally. The first confirmed murders involved young couples parked in secluded areas, attacked suddenly and without warning. These early crimes established patterns that investigators would later recognize: isolated locations, nighttime attacks, and a clear focus on control rather than robbery or personal motive. One of the most important details recovered from the crime scenes was the specific brand of ammunition used, Super X, which later appeared in Zodiac letters, proving the killer had intimate knowledge of the crimes. These murders showed planning, patience, and familiarity with the area, suggesting the killer was local or spent significant time nearby. Even in the beginning, there were signs that this wasn't random violence. The killer appeared calm, deliberate, and confident, traits that would define the Zodiac persona. These first murders laid the foundation for everything that followed. Letters, ciphers, and the Zodiac psychology. What truly separated the Zodiac from other killers was his need to be heard. After the early murders, letters began arriving at newspapers, filled with cryptic symbols, threats, and disturbing confidence. In these letters, the Zodiac described details only the killer could know, effectively daring authorities to stop him. One cipher, later solved, claimed that his victims would serve him in the afterlife, an idea that suggested either a twisted belief system or deliberate psychological manipulation. Many experts believe the Zodiac enjoyed control more than killing itself. The ciphers forced the public to engage with him, turning fear into fascination. Misspellings, unusual phrasing, and poetic language became trademarks of his communication style. These writings provided rare insight into the killer's mindset: narcissistic, manipulative, and desperate for recognition. The letters weren't just messages, they were weapons. Survivors who saw too much. Unlike many serial killer cases, the Zodiac investigation included survivors, people who lived through his attacks. Their testimonies became crucial, offering rare first-hand accounts of his behavior. Survivors described a calm, methodical attacker who appeared confident and unhurried. In one case, a survivor recalled being blinded by a light, similar to how police vehicles illuminate suspects, raising questions about the killer's familiarity with law enforcement tactics. These witnesses also noted details about the killer's voice, posture, and movements, details that would later be debated and reanalyzed for decades. Survivors often carried guilt, trauma, and fear long after the attacks, especially as the killer remained free. Some investigators believe these witnesses knew more than they ever publicly admitted, possibly out of fear. Their accounts remain some of the most important and haunting pieces of the Zodiac puzzle. The suspects everyone already knows. Over the years, several men have been widely labeled as possible Zodiac suspects. Names like Arthur Lee Allen, Lawrence Kane, and Richard Gaikowski frequently appear in books and documentaries. Each had suspicious traits: connections to victims, interest in codes, matching physical descriptions, or disturbing behavior. Yet none were ever charged. In many cases, evidence was circumstantial or contradictory. DNA testing later cleared some suspects, while others died before further investigation could continue. These suspects dominated public discussion for decades, creating the impression that the Zodiac must be one of them. But focusing so heavily on these individuals may have narrowed the investigation too much. If the killer didn't fit the expected profile, if he was someone trusted, respected, or in authority, he could have avoided serious suspicion altogether. This possibility opens the door to newer, more controversial theories. The grandson's claim changes everything. In 2025, the case took a dramatic turn when a former police officer named Jay claimed his grandfather may have been the Zodiac Killer. This wasn't based on rumor or internet speculation. It came from personal investigation. Jay discovered that his grandfather worked as a Vallejo police officer during the time of the murders and later became a detective. As he dug deeper, disturbing connections began to appear, matching timelines, similar handwriting quirks, shared linguistic errors, and behavioral patterns that mirrored the Zodiac's actions. Even more unsettling, his grandfather had involvement in some of the very crime scenes tied to the Zodiac. For Jay, this wasn't about fame, it was about truth and accountability. His claim forced people to consider an uncomfortable question. What if the Zodiac wasn't being hunted by police, but was part of them, hiding in plain sight? The idea that the Zodiac could have been a police officer explains many unanswered questions. Law enforcement training would explain the killer's confidence, understanding of evidence, and ability to manipulate crime scenes. It could also explain why he avoided capture for so long. According to Jay, his grandfather was present near key locations, controlled scenes, and even wrote official reports that shaped the investigation's timeline. If true, this would mean the Zodiac wasn't just evading justice, he was directing it. Witness descriptions, survivor confusion, and missing evidence suddenly make more sense under this theory. A badge provides trust, authority, and access. It also discourages suspicion. This concept is deeply unsettling, but history has shown that authority does not equal innocence. The possibility of the Zodiac hiding behind a uniform reframes the entire case. What's still missing, and what comes next? Despite how compelling this theory is, it's important to be clear. Suspicion is not proof. No court has ruled on this case, and many questions remain unanswered. Physical evidence, DNA confirmation, and official acknowledgement are still missing. However, Jay's findings have reopened discussions that were once considered closed. Families of victims, retired investigators, and journalists have begun sharing information that had been buried for decades. Whether this theory leads to legal closure or not, it has already changed how people view the Zodiac case. It reminds us that history isn't fixed, and that some truths take generations to surface. The search for answers continues, not just to name the killer, but to finally give peace to those who have waited far too long. The Zodiac mystery may finally be closer to the truth than ever before, But the questions are far from over. What do you think about this theory? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dive investigations, and join us as we uncover the next mystery.